process. We have agreed to jurisdiction that this should be an expedited act from the Arizona Supreme Court. And here's what we're asking them to resolve. These almost 98,000 voters be given a Fed-only status, or should they continue to be granted full ballot access as they have been, many for many, many years? We have seen the inner workings of these systems in the various offices to some success. Having identified this issue, the governor directed the Motor Vehicle Division immediately to begin recoding their system. And as the governor has indicated, their work is done. That left it to our office and the statewide voter registration system, the technicians that support that, to do their testing. That testing was completed this morning. Today, as to the future, we don't have an issue, but the legal question still has to be answered. And the most important thing I think folks need to know is this: we are being open and transparent in bringing this issue forward. We are making absolutely certain that folks understand that, good, bad, or indifferent, we're going to keep the public informed. We're going to let you know what is happening, and we're going to try to reach a resolution that is as fair as possible to Arizona's voters, because you deserve the best, most transparent, free, and accessible elections that you can have. My obligation is to Arizona's voters and to ensure the quality of the election process. We have no reason to believe that there are any significant numbers of individuals remaining on this list who are not eligible to vote in Arizona. We cannot confirm that at this moment, but we don't have any reason to believe that. We also understand that the largest proportion of these voters, first and foremost, the main age group is from 45 to 60 years old. They received driver's licenses in Arizona originally before 1996, and so proportionately, just like the rest of the state, they are, the plurality of them are Republican, followed by Independents and Democrats. And so that's sort of the voter profile that we're looking at. Make sure that folks understand that we have identified an issue. We have, for the most part, done what we can do to resolve this issue moving forward. But the litigation that has been announced today is going to be answered hopefully tomorrow by my office. We will be responding in kind. And again, this is a legal question only. The recorder and I have stipulated to the facts. Our attorneys have coordinated as to the factual questions, as to the procedural questions, as to the legal issues that are to be raised. We are, however, taking legally different points of view so that we can have a rule of law in Arizona that we can then abide by. We just want them to answer the question. And so, given that background and information, I'm prepared to answer any questions that you might have. Dennis and Howard.
How are these voters, are you alerting these voters that they may not be eligible to vote, or would they find out if they try to cast a ballot?
That's a great question, Dennis, and thank you very much. For all Arizona voters, I want to tell you this. If you are on this list, rest assured you will be contacted soon by elections officials. That being said, we are not going to start contacting voters willy-nilly until we have final resolution from the court. At this moment, we will proceed status quo. So if you have not been contacted by your local election official, then you can go ahead and understand that you'll be receiving your ballot. Many you will have a ballot going out tomorrow. Thursday and Friday is the deadline. Sometime soon thereafter. So as all Arizona voters, I just want to let you know, until you are contacted by a state election official or a county election official, there may be other methods that we are still looking into to be able to, through our access to other databases, figure out whether or not some of these folks would be eligible, and we can parse that list down even further quickly. We're still exploring those options.
Let's talk about the remedy. Let's assume the Supreme Court sides with Mr. Richard and says the 98,000, whatever the final number comes down to be. What's the remedy if I'm one of the people who's notified, by the way, you're only going to get to vote for or against Trump, etc.? Can I go down to a county office with my documented proof of citizenship, show up on election day with a passport or something else? What's my remedy if in fact I'm on the list and the Supreme Court sides with Richard?
What we can say is if the outcome is being litigated by the county recorder's office, which I'm not saying whether he agrees or disagrees, we're just taking legal positions different so we can get the rule. Should the Supreme Court come down on the side that these folks should become Fed-only voters, we will advise voters appropriately, and the last day and moment to present proof of citizenship will be 7 p.m. on election day. We are continuing to advise folks to vote early and to make sure that you get through the process as quickly as possible. But until that announcement gets made and folks get notified, we're asking folks to just stand by.
So I'm presuming that you're counting on the fact that when by the time early ballots go out on the 9th, I guess, of October, you will have a definitive ruling from the Supreme Court so that the early ballots being sent out will reflect Fed-only versus state.
That's correct, and we have seen this before in Arizona elections where a smaller group than the whole of voters have been inadvertently given a ballot. This happens occasionally, and we make those corrections by notifying those voters which appropriate ballot should happen. So we're hoping the Supreme Court will act swiftly once we get our response into the lawsuits that have been filed, and under that guidance, then we can move forward in conjunction with all of Arizona's elections officials.
Let me ask one other quick technical question. As you know, there's litigation by certain groups against the 15 counties doing proper citizenship, whether it's using the SAVE system or anything else. Are you concerned that they are going to try to intercede and slow things / muddy things up?
I think that the Supreme Court will appreciate the exigent circumstances here and act with alacrity. Yes.
Secretary Bond, as you stress transparency during this process, County Recorder Richard said he made his discovery last week. Why are we only finding out about this in the last 24 hours?
That's a great question. You're only finding out about this in the last 24 hours because we wanted to make absolutely certain that we could answer the questions that you're going to have intelligently, that we could start finding resolution to some of these problems, not just on the technical side of the house, but also on the legal side of the house. And so while this discovery was made several days or a week or so ago, I can't remember the exact date, we wanted to make sure to get all of our ducks in a row before we came and presented this. Transparency is one thing, but because of the conspiracy theories and misrepresentations that have been made about all parts of our election systems, not just this part, we wanted to be absolutely sure that we had all of our facts straight before we brought it to the public. But let me note, again, we are bringing this to the public. There may have been the wrong thing to do to bring this forward and say, here's what I indicated. The governor's office has been very supportive, as has the Attorney General's office. The county attorney in Maricopa County has been involved. The recorder and I felt, in speaking with all these folks, we needed someone to challenge the position that we were going to be taking. The county recorder has agreed to, once we make that final filing, and hopefully by then, we're not certain that that's going to happen.
And going back to the remedy, so if I think I'm one of those voters, citizenship, and say, hey, here it is, just make sure I'm on the right list.
We really prefer that not happen. Once we have a rule from the Supreme Court, then we will be able to present to voters an organized way by which we can gather that data. You won't have to go anywhere. We are working in my office right now to set up an electronic portal where folks can send us those documents and we can distribute them to the county. So that is not completed yet, but we're in the works in case we need to do that now. One way or another, these folks may very well have to produce that documented proof of citizenship. We are hoping that our legal position will prevail with the Supreme Court, and we can just go with the status quo for now and make any corrections we need after this election. Yes.
Who are these 98,000 people? Why is it creating such a problem?
Well, the 98,000 people, as I indicated earlier, all received their driver's license prior to October 1st, 1996. Now, that's the day where Arizona started requiring proof of legal presence in the United States to get a driver's license, right? So, green card, legal permanent residence, student visas, or anyone that was born in the country. After October 1st, 1996, that was a requirement. Before that, there was no such requirement. Now, at some point, these individuals would have been issued a new driver's license. It's that new issuance date that the voter registration system saw as the issuance date. And because the state of the law after that was that these folks had already provided documented proof of citizenship, whether or not they had wasn't the case. Motor Vehicle Division was telling our databases, our electronic system, that they had because of that new issuance date. This coding error, I would call it, has been fixed by the governor's office, and the receiving side over on the voter registration database has been fixed as well. But imagine, if you will, my case. I received my driver's license. It was originally issued in 1986. Had I stayed sort of in the same home and never really done anything but maybe get registered to vote in a new place later, after having received a duplicate driver's license, for example, maybe with a new address, I wouldn't necessarily have had to go down to the MVD, but that new issue date would have been after the documented proof of citizenship requirement popped in on the registration side. But as to the MVD, their business rules didn't change anything but the issuance date. So the voter registration system would have assumed that I had provided documented proof of citizenship. That's the miscommunication between these two systems, and that's why this is an issue right now. That's also one of the reasons why we are hoping that this legal as for voters 45 to 60, give or take. So the plurality is Republican. Majority would be more than 50%. It's less than 50%. But the largest group of them are Republican voters. Then the next largest group would be independents and Democrats, as is usual for all of Arizona's voters between 45 and 60 years old. So if you're between 45 and 60 years old, you may be on this list. But again, it's unlikely because it's a very small number. Given our 4.1 million voters in Arizona, it's not a humongous number, but it is enough that we need to deal with it. Yes?
What is the distribution of these voters across counties?
Not unlike the political party distribution, the geographic distribution is almost exactly the same as what we would see if you looked at a percentage distribution across the state of Arizona. So 60 to 62% are going to be in Maricopa County, and as the size of the county diminishes, you will see a very similar numbers once we get those numbers exacted and finalized. Yeah, yes?
Does this make you reassess any of the other issues like this? Are you doing any extra tests or anything like that?
Well, we are paying attention to the totality of our systems. One of the things that I think a lot of folks should pay attention to is the fact that this happened, and the fact that this happened because we've got some misguided policies that are anomalous in the United States, by the way. Every single one of these voters has met the minimum criteria in swearing an affirmation under penalty of perjury that they would have to do to vote in every election across the rest of the United States of America. Only Arizona has this, what I think is an unreasonable extra burden on its voters. And so that's why they get to vote Fed only in the worst case scenario here. So we're hoping they can vote the whole ballot. But as to your question, we're absolutely going to be looking at as many of the other systems as we have to see that this works. But I do want to expand a little bit on that. This happened because we've got policies that are being driven by conspiracy theories, and we have for a long time. It has never been the case in the United States of America or in Arizona that non-citizen voting has been anything other than vanishingly rare. And yet we have a very onerous system. And assumptions are being made by lawmakers that you can snap your fingers and solve these problems by comparing this database and that database. Obviously, that's not true. But it's even less true where you have systems that are not and we didn't get it. We asked for those technicians, and we didn't get them. This year we asked, and we got a little more. We said,
Yes, yeah, please. The difference between.
was part of the conversation of what we were supposed to do, what was part of the conversation of what we were supposed to do, what we should do. I think sweep under the rug is a little, that's not, well, no, I don't think I used those words. But one of the suggestions, when we throw all these ideas on the table, we throw them all on the table, and one of them was, let's wait until January out there. And that's not obviously the path that we took.
What about accountability? Is there anything that you're looking to, or is it more important to just go forward and make sure there's no other issues that you need to contend with?
Yeah, as to accountability, I simply have to say what I said earlier. My obligation is to Arizona's voters that we have quality election processes in Arizona. There are investigative and prosecutorial bodies who might be looking towards these sorts of things. That is the business of other departments. My job is to be the chief election officer and make sure these systems work well. And when we see an issue, we identify, bring the issue forward, and then we try as quickly as possible to resolve the issue, hopefully with the help of the state Supreme Court.
Are you gonna set
Yes.
up
Sorry, let me let her have a follow-up.
are you gonna set up a website or anything like that, so if people think they are affected, that way they don't have to push through the entire website for this issues?
Yeah.
Complicate, I guess, the timing of this action.
Well, frankly, it might complicate the timing, but I would invite concerned parties to jump in as quickly as possible and prepare as quickly as possible. That any of those parties might have, what some of the themes in our response are going to be. Again, this is a lawsuit that you're never going to see, right? We talked to the recorder about this. Our lawyers have been talking to them consistently, and so folks that might want to get involved in this, I can't believe that I'm asking folks to jump into litigation. Usually you don't want that, but in this case we want to make sure that all voices are heard. But if they're going to get heard, we need folks to work fast. Yes.
As you know, we have two individuals with very little of this type of experience running for the reporter's office. Given that, the reporter who caught this, can you speak to the need to have, I guess, folks who have that type of experience in these positions?
Well, here's the interesting thing. When I was elected in 2016, I'd never run elections, and when Mr. Richard beat me in 2020, he hadn't either. This is an office at Maricopa County that is filled with very experienced people, and I love leadership. The policy questions are the ones, just like Mr. Richard's willingness to file on his side of this petition and to technically argue his point. It is more important that folks understand that they respect the rule of law, and they're not going to be running any of it by way of conspiracy theories. That to me is the most critical component of all of this.
Are you
Yes.
anticipating any lawsuits regarding long in the past or even recently in the past elections, people dispute those results?
Yeah, that's a great question about disputing results of past elections. To that, let me just say this. I was on the 2016 ballot, and I won. I was on the 2020 ballot, and I won. No, I lost that one. And then I was on 2022, and I won. Sorry, Howie caught me on that one. Look, bottom line is Arizona runs great elections. And there's no reason to believe that any of these folks are not eligible to be voting the way they are voting. If we find that, we will find it and deal with it. The bottom line is this. This isn't about the past. This is about what we can do moving forward. And we are going to continue to focus on the future. If there is continued litigation on past elections, Arizona has a policy towards finality. And Arizona needs to be able to move forward. We need our businesses to be able to do their business. We need law to do law. We need medicine to do medicine. We need educators to educate towards the future. Past grievances need to be put where they belong in the past.
But Secretary Fontes, how can you argue that there's no reason to believe that anyone has voted that shouldn't be voting in these past elections when this issue was discovered? Because, if I'm not mistaken, the recorder's office found somebody who was voting.
Well, no, the individual actually had never cast a ballot. And the voter registration was originally made in 2022 for this individual person. This was discovered not because somebody was voting illegally, and not because somebody was attempting to vote illegally, as far as we can tell. This was basic voter roll maintenance, and it showed us that there is this issue. And instead of just kind of pushing it aside and not dealing with it, we're attacking the problem and making sure that folks can continue to be confident that those of us who are running Arizona's elections, we're going to face these controversies. We're going to face these issues, as uncomfortable as that may be for us. And so I think that should actually build confidence so that folks can know, even if we do have issues, we're going to solve them. We're going to figure it out and we're going to move forward. Yeah, Brian?
Just to follow up on that question, I know Stephen Richards said this, and perhaps you've said it already, but is there any reason to believe that any of these 98,000 voters are non-citizens?
No, there isn't. Every single one of these voters has met the criteria that every other American voter outside of this state has met. They have all sworn an affidavit under penalty of perjury that they are U.S. citizens, they are over 18, and they are neither a felon or otherwise incapacitated. That penalty of perjury is important. And we have seen vanishingly rare cases in the United States, across the country, where, sometimes people are either mistaken or misled into registering to vote, but they don't necessarily then vote. And we saw, my counterpart in Georgia indicated that there were several thousand cases they saw where people attempted to register to vote. Well, they weren't allowed to register to vote there. We know that voter registration is country are secure. And we know that in Arizona, we have an exceedingly higher burden that we place on our voters to be able to register to vote. And it's that combination of this extreme policy basically the suffocating of our systems through a lack of resources, I think, that is more to blame for this than anything else.
I think we've beat that.
Are we done?
We've been into that, like the light's gone out. I think,
Batteries dead.